Before we get into the video, please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoy this video. So we are here to give out my end of year awards. Now these are purely my awards, who I am giving them to. Some of these were very hard. Once we get into the MVP, you will see how hard it was for me to come up with these certain categories and who I think should have won. A lot of these categories were really stacked, and I think this season, not only was the conferences and the games and the win-loss records, everything itself was completely wide open this season, but I think you can even say that all the awards that the NFL hands out at the end of the year are completely wide open. But these are who I would give my vote to if I had a vote for each of these awards. So let's start with Comeback Player of the Year. Now, I chalked this down to two people, and I'd like to give my honorable mention first, and that would be Dak Prescott. Coming off of a horrific injury and throwing for 4,449 yards, 37 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, having an absolutely great season for the Cowboys and helping them and leading them into the playoffs that can't go unnoticed. He had a great season. But who I personally would give Comeback Player of the Year to would be Joe Burrow. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Dak Prescott. My reasoning and the reason why I chalked it down to Joe Burrow was he got injured in his rookie year behind a terrible offensive line. And you can even argue in his rookie year, he was the main reason why the Bengals had any success. Then this season, going into the season, some people may not even had any expectations for Joe Burrow whatsoever. He's coming off of a knee injury. The offensive line is terrible. They didn't invest in it. And they're like, all right, it's just going to be the same thing over again this year. And some people thought, myself included, it was a nasty injury. And I thought he was going to come in and he wasn't going to be able to play well because he was going to be playing scared because of that knee injury. Not only was that not true, I think you could even argue that Joe Burrow could win the MVP. Joe Burrow had 4,611 yards, 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, won his division, and I think himself single-handedly changed the Bengals franchise. They didn't invest in their offensive line, but boy howdy, Joe Burrow in one season after coming off of a horrific ACL injury was able to come back in his second year and look like a veteran quarterback and do it at a very, very elite level. So my Comeback Player of the Year would be Joe Burrow. The next award we have is Defensive Rookie of the Year. Now, before we give out who I personally think would win and should win this award, I have two honorable mentions. Patrick Surtain of the Denver Broncos, 4 interceptions, a pick 6, and 14 passes defended. Now, he was very great. People talked about him quite a bit, but I don't think he got the respect, and people talked about him enough for the simple fact that the Denver Broncos were not a very good football team this year, and I think he's going to be a stud on that Denver Broncos defense for years to come. And because I want to give my biases in here, I'm not afraid to admit it, Nick Bolton. He led the Chiefs in tackles and had an absolutely amazing season, and he's going to be a future of that Chiefs linebacking core. But my Defensive Rookie of the Year is Micah Parsons. 13 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and you could argue it was an absolute game changer for the Cowboys defense, who was horrific last year. Literally the worst defense you could argue in football last year, was able to help completely turn around that Cowboys defense. There were some injuries on that Cowboys defense earlier on in the season that allowed him to play more, but he took full advantage of those opportunities that he had and showed how much of an elite level defensive player that he can be. And so I have Micah Parsons as Defensive Rookie of the Year. Next, we have Offensive Rookie of the Year. I have one honorable mention for this award, and it's Creed Humphrey. He only allowed 1 sack, and you can argue not only is he a rookie, he arguably could be the best center of the entire game of football. He dominated the line of scrimmage all year long, protected Mahomes like crazy, was a very great asset for the Chiefs, for them picking him up. And as a rookie, to play as great as he has, I think it's safe to say, and I think it's fair to give Creed Humphrey an honorable mention for Offensive Rookie of the Year. But who I would give Offensive Rookie of the Year to is Jamar Chase. 81 receptions, 1,455 yards, 13 touchdowns, which was 3rd in the NFL, and he just turned out to be an absolute stud of a wide receiver. You could argue that, again, he's already an elite level offensive talent on that Cincinnati Bengals. Him and Joe Burrow absolutely lit up the NFL this season. That duo is going to be dangerous for years to come. They're going to be so much fun to watch. And as a Chiefs fan, they are dominant. They were completely unstoppable for us. So my offensive rookie of the year goes to Jamar Chase. For defensive player of the year, now this category, I have a whole bunch of honorable mentions. We obviously have to mention Micah Parsons, who I would give defensive rookie of the year. Trayvon Diggs, who had an absolutely good season. He was a ball hawk. You have Myles Garrett, a great season for the Browns, and you have Aaron Donald. And then you're going to be like, well, Aaron Donald's stats aren't that as great as, all these other people's. Well, the fact that he's getting triple teamed on every single play, that alone deserves an honorable mention. And you can even argue that he could win defensive player of the year. But my defensive player of the year would have to go to TJ Watt. I think it was a pretty easy choice to give TJ Watt defensive player of the year, in my opinion. 22.5 sacks. He tied Michael Strahan for the single season record. He did it in one less game, and even some of the games that he did play, he didn't even play most of the games. And he was one of the factors that helped lead the Steelers into the playoffs. He had an absolutely dominating season, and you could argue he is the best defensive player in the NFL. So my defensive player of the year goes to TJ Watt. Next, we have offensive player of the year. I have one honorable mention for offensive player of the year, and that would be Jonathan Taylor, who again, earlier on this season was also in the MVP race. But Jonathan Taylor, 1,811 yards rushing, averaged 5.5 yards per rush, and had 20 total touchdowns this season. Had a great season, but I think we all know who the offensive player of the year is, and that is Cooper Kupp. He is the Triple Crown winner, 145 receptions, 1,947 yards, and 16 touchdowns. He just lit up the NFL this season. He had a dominating, and I mean a dominating season. This in my lifetime, I would say this was one of the most dominating wide receiver seasons I think I've seen. And I've been watching football for, since I was 10. I'm not very old now, but I've been watching football for a long time. This was a very, very dominating season by Cooper Kupp. A great season, and you could even argue that this was an MVP level season that Cooper Kupp had. He's so smart. He's so dynamic. He can do literally anything. He can be lined up at any part of the football field. The dude is electric. He can do everything, and Cooper Kupp is my offensive player of the year. Next, we have coach of the year. There's quite a few honorable mentions I had in this category. We had Bill Belichick, Zach Taylor, and Nick Sirianni. Now, Bill Belichick, I mean, why would you put him on there? He's a Patriots. He's been there forever. Well, what he did with Mac Jones this season, getting them into the playoffs, I think is something that does deserve to be talked about. Zach Taylor, again, the great season that the Bengals had. And Nick Sirianni, the Eagles, going from 2-5 to making the playoffs. Again, something that's great and deserves to be talked about. But my coach of the year goes to Mike Vrabel. I just think what he's done with that Tennessee Titans team, the Titans, who have played the most players in NFL history in one season. Their best player, Derrick Henry, goes down. A.J. Brown goes down at a time. Julio Jones was down at some times. Just their never-ending revolving door of players that they have to constantly play the entire season it was fantastic what Mike Vrabel had to do. I think there's an argument for even a guy like Matt LaFleur to win this award. But I just think what Mike Vrabel was able to do with Tennessee, lead them to the number 1 seed, without their best player. And even when some of their best players were down, they continued to win, continue to fight. And as I said again, we're able to get the number 1 seed in the AFC. My coach of the year has to go to Mike Vrabel. And for the toughest award this season, the award that I think is completely wide open, we have the MVP. Now, the honorable mentions, I have Cooper Kupp, Jonathan Taylor, and Joe Burrow. I think all those guys at some point this season, and even now, if the voters really wanted to, they could all win MVP. And I think it comes down to 2 guys, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Now, this MVP race is one of, if not the most wide open MVP races of all time. The addition to the 18th game, just how long the season was, this season, it never, in my opinion, felt like there was a clear-cut MVP this entire season. Some years, like Lamar Jackson won it, Patrick Mahomes won it, Aaron Rodgers last year, it felt like we knew for a while that they were going to win it. But this year, there was no clear-cut winner. But if I were to vote and give out the NFL MVP, I would have to give it to Aaron Rodgers. Now, I think, as I was saying, there's an argument to give it to Tom Brady or even Joe Burrow, even Cooper Kupp, and even Jonathan Taylor. There's an argument for every single one of those guys. I really do believe that. And if we're looking at the stats, yes, Tom Brady had the better stats. He had more completions. He had more attempts. He had more touchdowns. He also threw more interceptions. And I'm not basing this purely on stats either. Because when I was looking at the stats, I didn't think that that was a true reflection for these guys and how well their season went and who should win MVP. Now, this is not discrediting Tom Brady. I think he had a fantastic season. And the fact that he's playing even better now at the age of 44 than he did, 15 years ago, I just think is absolutely insane. But there was a couple reasons why I chalked this down to Aaron Rodgers. One, some people thought that the game against the Chiefs when Jordan Love had to start, that kind of diminished his case for MVP. My opinion, that raised it a lot. That raised his case dramatically, in my opinion. That game just showed how much they missed Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love was terrible. Every time Jordan Love played this season, he was terrible. So in that aspect, Aaron Rodgers showed his value to the Green Bay Packers. Second, I went through each and one of their games, and each game they lost. Tom Brady, yes, he started every single game, and he lost 4 games this season. And he couldn't beat the Saints once this season, and having, in my opinion, the worst loss of these two. He lost to the Saints 9-0, was terrible in that game. Yes, Rodgers, week 1, lost 38-3 to the Saints. I'm not saying the final score, but I just think as a whole, those two were their absolute worst games of the season, so you can kind of throw them out. But if you throw out those games and leave the rest of them, Aaron Rodgers only lost 1 game the rest of the entire season, where he started the entire game. Yes, he lost to the Lions in week 18, but the rest of the season, he only lost 1 game where he started the whole game, and that was against the Vikings. He still threw 4 touchdowns, 385 yards, and didn't throw an interception. And yes, he had the best touchdown to interception ratio of the entire season, and it wasn't even close. This dude does not turn the ball over. And again, this isn't me discrediting Tom Brady's season, but I think Tom Brady's games where he played bad were much worse than the games that Aaron Rodgers played bad. And even if Aaron Rodgers did happen to have a pretty down game, he was still able to come out with the victory. Now, if Tom Brady wins it, I'm not going to be surprised. If Aaron Rodgers wins it, I'm not going to be surprised. But I think this race was really tight. I chalked it down to the win-loss at some point. I had to do the win-loss. The fact that Aaron Rodgers lost 2 games when he started the entire game, and Tom Brady, he started every game, and he lost 4 of them this season. So it's a very tight race, very close race, but my NFL MVP goes to Aaron Rodgers. In the comment section below, give me who you think should win Comeback Player of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, and MVP. Give me your thoughts down below, and I'll see you in the next one.